So let's get started. So anyway, wherever we are, whatever time it is, anyway, we made it through another week. We're still here. So that's good. That's good news. Now we're going to start off with a few minutes thinking about bodhicitta so we get the best motivation, meaning we get the most out of the time we're going to be spending together, only a short time. There are other things besides, the bodhicitta motivation, thinking for the sake of all sentient beings, I have to achieve enlightenment. If I'm going to do this, spend this time learning about the stage of the path, thinking about it. Things like, having a firm decision right from the outset, just like with our meditation, when we do our meditation sessions, not to be distracted, to listen with a clear mind, unbiased, not gullible, but open. That kind of thing. And there's lots of things like that that are talked about early on in the text. The 3 faults of a vessel, the 6 attitudes, and so on. But anyway, for sure, the main thing is to have the bodhicitta motivation. Bodhicitta motivation, so bodhicitta, the awakening mind. The mind intent on achieving awakening. So it's not just wanting to achieve enlightenment, although literally that's what it means. It's wanting to achieve enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. And it's quite nice that in the Tibetan they usually do it the other way around. Simjin tam jigi dundu, for the sake of all sentient beings, all the mother sentient beings. Magyu Simjin tam jigi dundu. Equal to the extent of space, they say. So in other words, like, well, infinite sentient beings. Anyway, however many there are, wherever they are, whoever they are, for their sake, I need to achieve enlightenment. For their sake means, just like us, we want happiness, and we don't like suffering. So all sentient beings are exactly the same. And yet, so much of the time, having a kind of warped idea of what is going to bring us happiness and what we have to do in order to get that happiness, so that it's as if we, like Shantideva says, it's like we destroy the cause of happiness, like it was our worst enemy, just because of not knowing, because of ignorance, sometimes out of habit. Even when you know you do the wrong thing, you know it's wrong, but you do it anyway, out of habit, or because the mental afflictions, one's attachment and so forth, the anger and so forth, are just too strong. So like ourselves, one of the reasons we're studying this topic, full truths, just like ourselves, those mother sentient beings, ill to the extent of space, kind mother sentient beings, who've cared so much for us in so many past lives, who've given their lives for us even, made great sacrifices to us, helped us been our best friend, closest friend, the one that helped us the most, our mother, so many past lives. So they're just like us. They've been distance since beginningless time, as Lama Zopa used to say. Beginningless time, no beginning. Beginningless lifetimes, no beginning. Since lifetimes in cyclic existence without beginning. Suffering so much in the various 6 realms as the 6 types of sentient being. And still it hasn't come to an end. It's not just going to come to an end because it's been going on for so long. It will only come to an end by practicing the path, which is what we have to do. If we practice the path, if we follow the path that the Buddha taught all the way to enlightenment, then we'll really be able to show others the way. Because what you do to help sentient beings once you achieve enlightenment is show others the way. You can't simply take away their suffering, like taking a thorn out of somebody's hand. You can't wash away all their negative karma and negative minds. You can't give them your realizations. The only way to help them is showing them the path that you yourself have traveled so that you can teach from experience. As enlightened being, your mind is so clear you can see exactly what suits different sentient beings. I think we can see that in the lives of our gurus. I think is particularly of Lama Yeshe, who was really quite amazing at showing people a path that suited them. So to be able to do that, we need to achieve enlightenment, and to achieve enlightenment, we need to learn about the path to enlightenment, the stage of the path to enlightenment, and that's why we're spending this time learning about the stage of the path according to, particularly, Jia Lama Tsongkhapa's middle-length Lamrim, middle-length stage of the path. So we do the refuge and bodhicitta prayer. Sangye Jedan Zoye Janam Janju Batu Dani Gyasu Chi Dagi Jinso Ye Pesonangi Drola Penje Sangi Drobara Jo. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. Okay, that's all. We don't need to read the other things. Yeah, so this part of the text is mostly to do with the Four Truths, which talk about the suffering nature of cyclic existence and where that suffering comes from. Then it talks about the possibility of a cessation of that and how to achieve that cessation, the path that leads that cessation. So we're on the the suffering nature of psychic existence. At the moment, the general ones. Then later on, quite soon, actually, just a little bit further down, we'll be looking at the specific types of difficulty, suffering experienced in by the different types of sentient beings. These are just general sufferings that everybody is subject to. Yeah. And then next chapter talks about the mental afflictions, which are the causes of that. Generally, the cause of suffering are karma and the mental afflictions, right? Karma and klesha. So karma is, I don't think he says much about karma because karma's already been explained quite a lot in the, early on in the text. So anyway, in this text, it's on page 161, and we've been looking at the 8 types of suffering. So you remember the suffering of birth, aging, sickness, and death, then the suffering of meeting with the unpleasant, suffering of separation from the pleasant things that you like, then the suffering of seeking what you desire and not getting it. So now the 8th one, in brief, the 5 appropriated aggregates are suffering. And so in the heading, this is in inverted commas because it's a quote. And so this was actually spoken by the Buddha. So this is what we're looking at. And again, it talks about 5 reasons why these 5 appropriated aggregates are in the nature of suffering. In the nature of suffering. The appropriated aggregates, basically aggregates, body, in other words, a body and mind, which we have, in other words, a life, really, this human life that we have at the moment, that we didn't simply come to out of choice, but we came to because of karma and the mental afflictions. Even though it's a good life, and of course, all sorts of suffering, but still it's a really good life because there's so much we can do. Though there are so many difficulties, there are ways of being able to understand that, why that's happening, what to do with it, especially when we get to the mind training teachings. Pretty amazing, actually. But anyway, so so this life is this human life is a product of karma and mental afflictions, because that's what the cause is. So you have to expect that there's going to be something wrong with the result, and we do have, it's not all just kind of pure happiness, unadulterated, uncontaminated. Pure happiness is it. So anyway, we have those 7 types of suffering that already talked about, and now this 8th one. And it's like that for wherever you're born. Wherever you're born, generally you have a body and mind which is going to bring you suffering. So here he's talking about how, so there are all those different types of suffering. And now with this 8th one, it's like actually just having a body and mind that that we came to, or we achieved, or whatever how you want to put it. Came to possess, came to have, because of karma and mental afflictions, not out of choice. So that means we have an appropriated body and mind, appropriated aggregates. As long as you have those, then you're going to have problems. So he talks about it in in sort of 5 points. So there, and there's a little bit of explanation below, not a huge amount, but anyway, a little bit of explanation below. So he says they are a vessel of suffering yet to come, a vessel. So anyway, basically, there is the suffering of future lives. The suffering of future lives is he's talking about, yet to come. Doesn't mean like tomorrow or the day after and so on. It's referring to future lives, not this life. Future lives. So all different kinds of. So we have all kinds of karma, the seeds of so many different types of karma, some good, some bad, from this life, from past lives. It's almost like, if it was a physical thing, you wonder where it could all be, how you could store it all, but it's all somehow in some sense it's in the mind, not the body so much, because the body gets left behind. The mind goes from life to life. So somehow the body has all these imprints of karma and imprints of mental afflictions. So we have everything that we need to make sure that future lives are going to also be inside existence, and therefore suffering after suffering after suffering, unless you learn from this and then decide to do something about it. Because of course, there is a path one can follow. There's a practice, there's a path to follow to be free of that. Anyway, so while you have this body and mind, so it's interesting, isn't it? So you have this body, and it's sort of like, well, of course, it's not perfect. We have, especially as you're getting older, it begins to looks worse and worse, and it feels worse and worse. But anyway, the fact is that anyway, and then in our mind, we know we have things like attachment and anger, and we have also some nice things going on, compassion and bodhicitta, and all sorts of other things, nice things like that, good things, helpful things. But anyway, it's like we're carrying around with us all of the seeds of suffering in future lives. Like as we're sitting here, we have all that. They are a vessel of the suffering already arisen. So partly this would mean, we've also got the karma, the seeds of karma potential to experience various kinds of suffering during this life, right? And they're also where that suffering takes place. So it's almost like your body and mind are the environment, the place where suffering the suffering of this life takes place. So, this body and mind, that's where suffering is going to happen. You can understand that, can't you? You think about the suffering of sickness and so on. So where the sickness takes place is here, and where it comes from is here, not from outside. Outside things can act as a condition, like a catalyst, otherwise. Then the third thing, they are a vessel for the suffering of suffering. So then it's like, so that's in general, but then specifically, they're a vessel for the suffering of change. So this, it's in these aggregates, these 5 aggregates, in this body and mind, that physical and mental suffering takes place. Suffering that you normally think of as suffering of painful, unhappy experiences. The nature of the fourth one there, vessel for the suffering of change. So all of the things we normally think of as being nice, but which are ultimately in the nature of suffering because they don't last. At least they don't last. And besides that, like something we were discussing last week, if the happiness that we experience from eating food, for example, was real happiness, then that would mean that the eating food is the real cause of happiness. And so the more we eat, the more happy we should feel, the more pleasure we should experience. But it doesn't work like that. At a certain point, you have to stop. At a certain point, if you do keep trying, then keep eating, then you end up feeling sick, and people even die, don't they? Especially, I mean, I don't know if it happens very often, but they do these Guinness Book of Records things. You can imagine after, if you eat, I don't know what the record is now. How many boiled eggs. But you can imagine if you eat too many, then you would just die, wouldn't you? You don't have to look it up. But anyway, you get the idea. You can definitely. That's one of the ways of dying, actually. Well, overeating. Well, there's overeating. I know this. There's one of the things it mentions in one teaching one book I read. When you eat on top of when you haven't really digested the previous meal, and then you eat again. So I think it means a bit like so maybe you have a big meal, maybe big meal because you really enjoy that meal. Then maybe a couple of hours later, when you're kind of still feeling full up, then you have another meal. So anyway, that's one thing that can lead to death. So anyway, so there's that. But so whether or not all kinds of what we might call samsaric happiness, the normal pleasures of this life, whether it's all like that, is something to think about. But but then what the other explanation that you often hear with the suffering of change is that what it means is what we think of as happiness and kind of experience as happiness or pleasure is actually simply a question. It's kind of like a feeling of relief. So you're feeling cold and you go next to the fire to get warm. So you like that, right? When we've been feeling cold and we sit next to the fire, we enjoy that warmth. But if you analyze, then actually what's happening is the one suffering stopped, the suffering of cold, well, anyway, got less. And then the suffering of being too hot started up as soon as you get next to the fire. But in the beginning, you don't notice it so much. So all you really experience is like that one suffering has stopped. Suffering being cold has stopped. And we're labeling happiness on top of that. And then when you sit there longer and longer, then the heat gets worse and worse, and you have to move away from the fire again. So they say, there are some teachings that say that actually all of the pleasure we experience in this life, it's all just labeled on suffering. It's actually just suffering, as in the suffering of suffering, Okay, so anyway, so all that takes place also within these aggregates, and these aggregates, have all of the potentials and the seeds for that to happen. So it's a bit like saying, it's like yeah, and it's sort of having this body, it sort of leaves you, what do you call it? Anyway, like susceptible to all kinds of suffering. Like because you have a body, you can get the injured, like burned or scalded and things like that. So it's like this, the body being a bit like a liability, but that's the nature of this body. Or like having the beginnings of an illness that you're not aware of yet, but which is going to grow and grow inside you until you becomes noticeable. But it's one that you're going to die from. So like walking around with that illness inside you. It's a bit like that. So then they are in the nature of the suffering of conditioning. And what this means, well, anyway, there's a bit of explanation coming, just coming up. But anyway, what it comes down to is like whatever else is going on, whether things are going well or whether things are going badly, whether they're not really going particularly badly or well at all times, because these aggregates, this body and mind, are under the control of karma and mental afflictions. And in other words, until we're free, then we always have the potential to suffer horribly. So that's it, really. So it says the first point is that the suffering of the next rebirth onward, the sufferings of the next rebirth onwards are induced in dependence upon the appropriation of the aggregates, these aggregates, it means. Then second, the present aggregates are the basis. The present aggregates are the basis of the suffering of illness, aging, and so forth that were mentioned above. So the suffering of this life. The previous 7 types of suffering, in other words. And then the aggregates, these aggregates, give rise to both the 3rd and 4th types of suffering due to their relationship with the negative tendency. So it's talking about the 3rd and 4th together there. And again, when it says, I think this came up before, negative tendencies it's to do with being under the control of and not being free of karma and mental afflictions. So that idea of being under the control of is no more than, the meaning is no more than we're not free of it. And if we ask ourselves, am I free yet? We know we're not free, right? So it means that we're still under the control of that. And there are those, so those are the negative tendencies. So you've always got this potential for experiencing the first two types of suffering. Then 5th, by their mere existence, simply by having these aggregates, they're in the nature of suffering, because all volitional formations under the control of something other. He says volitional formations. I think this is incorrect. Basically, what this is talking about is practically anything we can think of is what they call conditioned. In other words, it's a product of various cause and conditions. And when the cause and conditions are karma and the mental afflictions, then the result is going to be what that conditions is, what that makes happen is suffering. That's anyway, so that's basically what that's saying. So then this should be a new paragraph, because it's a general comment. If no genuine disenchantment towards psychic existence. So genuine disenchantment, you see. In other words, like really thinking psychic existence is really awful. It's not just when you're feeling sick, thinking, oh, samsara is terrible, when you're feeling sick, when something really bad has happened. It's even on a sunny day when you're feeling well, to feel that kind of disenchantment, to feel, yes, like it kind of seems okay right now, but things can change so easily because I'm not free yet. And that's the thing about psychic existence. So unless you have that genuine disenchantment, yeah, and that also means genuine means like arising naturally. You've thought about it and it's become so clear to you that it's just like it's obvious to you. You don't even really have to think about it anymore. It's just obvious to you. Towards psychic existence, which is of the nature of the appropriated aggregates, So really, it's almost like not much difference between appropriated aggregates and cyclic existence. I mean, cyclic existence means having these contaminated aggregates, contaminated body and mind. Then there is no way a genuine mind striving for liberation will develop. So that's obvious, isn't it? So if you don't think that cyclic existence is a bad thing, then you're not going to want to get away from it. As long as you think it's kind of not that good, but also not too bad, it's just how life is, then you're going to have that less of a wish to become free of it. And if you don't really understand the true nature of psychic existence, that's all it's talking about. Just if you really understand psychic existence, you're not going to want it, and so you're going to want to be free of it. You're going to want to achieve freedom from it, and that's renunciation. Is like the new the second Rinpoche, Senjap Second Rinpoche was saying, renunciation has 2 points. One is understanding the suffering nature of psychic existence, and the other is wanting to achieve liberation from it. Okay, so you won't have that, and then if you don't have that, then great compassion for sentient beings wandering in cyclic existence will also not develop. Look at that smile. Lovely. Okay, anyway. Right. Which is nature of the appropriate. Therefore, these contemplations are extremely important, whichever vehicle you enter. So whether you want just your own personal liberation, or whether you want to achieve enlightenment for sake of all sentient beings, anyway, you need to think about the suffering nature of psychic existence. Okay? That's what we need. Then it goes on to the 6 sufferings, 6 types of suffering. There's also quite a short section on this. This comes from Letter to a Friend, which is Nagarjuna, by Nagarjuna. And so he doesn't quote it, but anyway, that's where this teaching comes from. And yeah, I've probably mentioned before, if you want to read more about this, for sure, Pabonka Rinpoche's what do you call it? Liberation in Our Hand. It's called Liberation in Our Hands. Liberation in Our Hands. Or there's also the Geshe Zopa's commentaries on the Lam Chenmo. Also very good. Really good. All right. So anyway, so just we'll yeah, there's not much explanation actually. So there's 6 general faults of cyclic existence. So lacking certainty, nothing being certain. If you know about the meditation on equanimity, which talks about how friend, enemy, stranger, these are not fixed. They can change. The friend can become the enemy can become the friend can become stranger becomes enemy, friend, and so on. Things are not fixed. So it's like that. Nothing is fixed. Lacking certainty means like things are just not fixed. Whatever, I mean, for sure with interpersonal relationships anyway, relationships with other sentient beings, it's always changing, but also everything is changing all the time, isn't it? Not just in the sense of being impermanent, changing moment by moment, but the fact that things just completely, things are going well, suddenly they're going badly. Things are going badly, things suddenly they're going well. And there's that nice story about Shariputra, but it's not quoted in here. But the one about Shariputra who who's walking along, maybe out on his arms around, and he sees this family scene, and he laughs. Everybody know that one? Some of you do. Well, anyway, let's see what I can remember of it. I'm sure it's there in some of the other texts, but it's not mentioned here. But anyway, I think so. He's got the family scene is the yeah the there's a sort of like mother and father with a baby and a dog. So, and they're eating fish, and the baby is on the mother's lap, and the father's kicking the dog. And so what happened is I'm probably going to get some of the details wrong, but anyway, what happens. So he's laughing because he can see that the father of this guy died and was born as a fish near where this family lived. And so they caught the fish and they roasted it and they were eating the flesh. And then they were feeding the bones to the dog. So the grandmother, so when she died, she was born as this dog. And so the dog was chewing on the bones of the grandfather, basically. And then the son was kicking the dog, which was his mother, right? Eating the flesh of the father. And then the baby was the family's like mortal enemy that had died and then been born into that family. So he says, it's really a joke somehow, because he's eating his father's flesh, kicking his mother, and the wife is, what you call it, nursing the enemy on her lap. So that's how things can change. So anyway, it's like that. Things. So particularly, with friend, enemy, stranger, changing all the time. Things are always changing, even within like one lifetime. Doesn't have to be from life to life. Even within one lifetime. I bet we've all experienced that. So then, lacking satisfaction. So this is. I think this has got two sides to it, because there's lacking satisfaction. Like you got first of all you got nothing, then you make maybe I don't know, like make it $10, and that's not enough. So you want to make 100. You got 100. You want to make 1,000. You want to take 1,000,000, and we know without I mean, the main thing is our own minds and our own lives, right? But I mean, you can see that there are people with billions who are not satisfied and want to make more billions, even though if you had $1 billion and spent $10,000 a day, it would take you something like 250, 270 years to spend it all. 10,000 a day. Can you imagine? Yeah, I think I'd spend 100,000 a day. Then it'd be gone in 27 years, which is probably I'll be dead by then anyway. Okay, so anyway, yeah. So there's that, So they say samsaric pleasures are like salt water. So when you get thirsty, you shouldn't drink salt water, right? Because it makes you more and more thirsty. So it's like that. So you anyway, never being satisfied. But then there's the other side of it, is like no matter how often you do it, you're going to have to do it again and again and again. It's like, it's like, so, well, we already talked about that, so you're born, but that's not enough. You're going to have to be born again, and you have to be born again and again. You have to die again and again and again and again. Right, anyway. So then having to discard one's body again and again. So particularly, single out here, so lacking satisfaction, having to discard one's body again and again, then being born again and again, and changing from high to low again and again. So I don't think, well, I mean, maybe if you think about it, changing from low to high could be a problem, but the main thing is high to low, isn't it? So, we're in quite a high position relatively. You think about the lives of animals. In fact, you think about the lives of many humans even. It's kind of privileged, but it's not going to last forever. I mean, like they say, the difference between this life and the next life is just in one breath. You stop breathing and that's it. So actually, yeah, what do they say? We don't know which is going to come first, tomorrow or our next life. You can never be sure, can you? It's really uncertain. So we're in this good position now. This time tomorrow, we could be just a banana slug, a mouse that everybody wants to. They're quite cute mice, but they also they leave their poop everywhere, and they make a lot of noise all day and night. When I'm at the LMB, there's quite a lot of wildlife, I think, in the building. There's almost day and night scratching going on. I think if there's scratching going on day and night, then eventually the house should fall down. Well, it hasn't so far, but anyway. Yeah. So changing from high to low, and then lacking companions. maybe. Yep. So the main thing about this is, well, like with the death meditation, when you die, you go on alone. You can be surrounded by friends and relatives and all that, but you have to go on alone. And in a way, even during our lifetime, when we suffer, you might have people around you that really care deeply for you, but they don't experience your suffering. You experience your suffering alone. You have to experience that. So it's all like that. That's all here. So then he talks about how those six are summarized into three things. And what's useful about this is that when you start doing this kind of thing, like summarizing them, then it helps you to get a deeper understanding of, it helps you to really identify them much better. So he says, there is nothing reliable in psychic existence. There's nothing reliable. Well, anyway, he's going to explain how this works, yeah, so there's nothing reliable. Then there's no final point of satisfaction, no matter how much of its happiness you enjoy. And then you have been in it since beginningless time. So what's interesting is he only talks about the first and the third in this text. He doesn't talk about the second. Gishisopa mentions the second one, and maybe it's in the Lamrim Chemo, I don't know. So the first one, there is nothing reliable in cyclic existence. And of those six, there are four which belong to this, can be sort of like grouped under the heading of there's nothing reliable in psychic existence. So one is your body. Your body is not, you can't rely on your body. You can't really count on it. I think you have to really think about this to get it, because it's like, I wasn't counting on my body anyway. You might think like that, but you did me wrong. You can't count on it. He says you can't rely on it. You can't count on it. Anyway, you can't count on the body because you have to give it up eventually. And that's something you have to do again and again. Then it also, so which of the six is those? It's the third one, right? The third one, it says, having to describe one's body again and again. Then it says it is also it's inappropriate to rely on benefit and harm done to you. There's no certainty as to whether your father will become your son, your mother, your wife, an enemy, someone very dear to you, and the like. So that's the first one. Nothing is certain, lacking certainty. So that's the first and the third. Then it's inappropriate to rely upon the excellence you have achieved. You fall from high places because you fall from high places to low ones. So that's the fifth one. So the third, the first, and the fifth one. Then then it says it is inappropriate to rely upon companions. You can't count on companions. You can in a way, but on a deep level you can't, because again, you have to go on without them in the end. He says you have to go on with it. So that's the sixth one. So four of them are to do with, you just can't count on them. Things you're not going to have them forever. That's about it, isn't it? You're not going to have this body. You can't count on, because you're not going to have it forever, because you have to give it up again and again. You can't count on benefit and harm, because these things change. Nothing is fixed. It's like you don't know where you are. There's nothing you rely on. And you can't also you can't count on your position, the position you've achieved, because you're going to lose that eventually. You can't count on companions, because you have to go on without them in the end. So then he mentions about the third one. So this is the third one. What was that? You have been in it since beginningless time. So the third one is that you are reborn again and again, and there seems to be no end to the continuity of birth. So this is talking about the fourth one, which is being born again and again. So you have been in it since beginningless time is connected with being born again and again and again. So if you think about this as being, not just this is how it is, but like this is how it's always been. So we've been born, then we were born again, and we were born again, and we were again and again and again, and we're going to be born again and again and again and again, endlessly, unless we do something about it. Then so he doesn't mention the second one, but the second one is there's no final point of satisfaction, and so he might have left it out because he thought it was obvious. The second one of those four is there's no final point of satisfaction, and that's the same as the second in the list of six, lacking satisfaction. They're just the same thing. Okay, and he says, reflect on this again and again. So let's spend a few minutes thinking about that, and maybe just whatever you look at the text, or you can your notes, or just summarize it in the way that he has here. There's nothing reliable. There's no final point of satisfaction, and you have been in it since beginningless time. Let's just see if we can get an idea of suffering nature of psychic existence by thinking about those three. So I think, well, with the particularly with this first one, there's nothing reliable in psychic existence. It seems to be to do with it's like in your life, you feel like you know where you are, you know how the land lies. It's like, so for better or worse, anyway, I have this body. I've had this body for 68 years. It's like, that's how things are. I have this body, but you don't have it forever. You have to leave it. You have to leave it behind. That's something you have to do again and again. Then even when it says you can't rely on benefit and harm, and this is all to do with friend and enemy and so on like that. So it's like you feel you know where you are. You've got your friends and your family that you hold close. Then there's your enemies. It's not like you count on them and depend on them, but somehow you know your enemies. That's how things are. These are the ones that want to harm me. These are the ones that I don't really care about. But that can change also. It's not fixed. See, nothing is fixed. Then, in terms of your position, like power, health, wealth, and so on, is just, again, it's like it's not fixed. You can't count on it. It's not fixed. Even within one lifetime, things change, and certainly from life to life. And then inappropriate to rely on companions. So you've got your companions, you've got these people, whether it's your teachers, friends, Dharma friends, family, and so on, that they're there. They've always been there. But then this also changes, because eventually you have to go on without them. In the end, that's the main one, with the lacking companions, going on to the next life without anybody, alone. So let's see. There are some other comments that he makes. Furthermore, most of the present happy feelings that increase our attachment are happy mental states that arise with respect to a relief of suffering. So that's something I was talking about before. There's no intrinsic happiness that is unrelated to the elimination of suffering. So personally, I find it quite a bit difficult to feel really convinced about that, but it's quite interesting to think about that all happiness, everything that we call happiness, and let's say, let's for a moment, like leave to one side the kind of satisfaction and feeling of fulfillment and so on that you get from your meditating on love and compassion and things like that. Just in general, that it's all labeled. It's all really no more than the relief of one suffering having come to an end or diminished, and then another kind of suffering gradually growing. So it's just labeled on suffering. For instance, if you suffer because you have walked too much, a happy mind arises due to sitting down. Then happiness appears to arise gradually, while the great previous suffering gradually ceases. So this is the similar to the feeling cold and going to the fire. So, and we've all experienced this, right? You walk, you're enjoying the walk, you get tired, you sit down, you enjoy sitting down, but you just can't sit down forever. You get fed up with sitting down, you get tired of sitting down, it becomes uncomfortable. You got to get up and stretch your legs. You got to walk a bit, but you can't keep walking, you have to stop, and so on and so on. Just as suffering increases to the same extent as you are subject to the cause of suffering. So this is the point, you see, if it's real happiness and the real cause of happiness, just as suffering increases to the same extent as you are subject to the cause of suffering. In other words, something that makes you suffer, if you keep doing it, then you suffer more. So it should be that the things that give you pleasure, the more you do them, the more pleasures you should experience. So the more you walk, the more happy and comfortable you should feel. The more you sit, because you enjoy that when you sit down after feeling tired of walking, you've enjoyed it. It should be that the longer you sit, the more happiness you're going to experience. You should build up, laying down, eating, drinking, sun, shade, and the like. Increase your happiness to the should increase, the increase your happiness to the same extent that you indulge in them. If those were causes of intrinsic happiness, that's how it would be. However, it appears that if they are extended long term, only more suffering is produced. So these points are also set forth in the Descent into the Womb Sutra and the root text of the 400 stanzas and its commentary. So that's by Arya Deva, and that's also been translated into English, 400 verses with commentary by, I think, Gyaltsabje. So now the individual sufferings. I think we should be able to get through this today. It's not very difficult. Okay, so the suffering of humans first. Oh, well, no, sorry. First of all, it says, so this is on page 163. This has 4 points: the suffering of the 3 lower rebirths, suffering of humans, suffering of demigods, and suffering of gods. Suffering of 3 lower rebirths already been explained, so it doesn't go into that again. Suffering of humans. This consists in the suffering of hunger and thirst, unpleasant contact with heat and cold. Then he says frantic activity and fatigue. So this is seems to be talking about, like frantically running here and there, doing this and that in order to get what we want, and then the exhaustion from all that. In addition, you should understand the 7 types of suffering from above. So when you're thinking about the suffering of humans, just think about this, the first 7 of the 8 that were mentioned above. Furthermore, discourse on the collections, Sambara Parikata. Also, in Geshe-Sopa's commentary, he says this is by Vasubandhu, the cousin of Asanga, younger brother of Asanga. All the sufferings of lower rebirths also appear to exist for humans, which I think is a bit of a strange thing to say anyway, but he means similar. He means similar. They are troubled by suffering like beings in hell. So we've got the possibility of, well, I mean, you can die from being burned in a fire, right? Or even if you don't die, anyway, we can be burnt. We get the suffering of being very cold, being cut, and all sorts of things. Then it says, are subjects of yama by their poverty. When it says subjects of yama, this is actually talking about the Preta realm is sometimes called the realm of yama. So anyway, so it's talking about how, the Pretas, as we know from before, they have the suffering of hunger and thirst. That's one of the main things, hunger and thirst. So when human beings are very poor, then what do? They get thirsty and hungry, and they suffer from that. And they also have the suffering of animals. Powerful ones oppress the weak ones, the weak by force. So just like animals are, pushed around by and used by humans, so also poor humans are exploited by the more rich and powerful humans. So there's that suffering, inflicting harm on them. They are just like raging rivers. So this gives the idea, the raging gives the idea of like just the suffering being very kind of like ferocious, very fierce, and then river being continuous. In the 400 stanzas, it says higher ones have mental suffering, lower ones have physical pain. So this is quite interesting. Anyway, so it finishes off by saying this world is overwhelmed by these 2 types of suffering every day. So people in higher positions, there's something to think about. For sure, they have mental suffering. Do they have more mental suffering? Lower ones have physical pain. So poor people have more physical pain. I mean, the pain of hunger, the pain of thirst, the pain of cold, and so on, because of what you got, the housing. I don't know. Anyway, like living in a tent city, that kind of thing. Yeah, terrible. So, for people who are very rich and powerful, I don't know if I wouldn't like to say they're all miserable, but there's so much misery that goes with that. The fear of losing your power, the fear of, do you have any real friends, or are they just attracted to your money? That kind of thing. I mean, if you read newspapers and magazines and so on, I mean, there's so many stories of extremely rich people that have had so much suffering. Unbelievable. Howard Hughes, was it? The one who got kind of very afraid of catching germs towards the end of his life. He was a bit of a playboy when he was younger. But I read somewhere, it's like when he died and they did an autopsy, he had this huge number of like ends of broken needles in his body. I remember reading that. So it's quite interesting, because no matter how rich or powerful you are, in the end, unless you just suddenly die, if you sort of like have getting older and older and weaker and having to rely more and more on the people around you, so you don't have any control anymore. They're controlling you. Then it's just a question of having good people around, and you can't guarantee that. So in his case, he obviously had some pretty bad people looking after him, and that can happen. And so very poor people can be looked after and cared for very lovingly by friends and relatives and so on when it comes to the end. Yeah. So anyway, this is quite interesting to think about. The higher ones have mental suffering, the lower ones have physical pain. This world is overwhelmed by these two types of suffering every day. So reflect in accordance with these statements. Then you've got the demigods and the gods. So demigods are the ones that I don't know why they're called gods, but anyway, but demigods. I think basically because even amongst the ones that are called gods, there are different levels with longer lives, more pleasure, and so on, or more or less, So anyway, it is said that the demigods are mentally tormented by jealousy because of the wealth of the gods. So it's like they, on the wheel of life, which we're going to be spend a few classes on, maybe after this set of classes. Yeah, on the wheel of life, there's they have one section for the gods and demigods because they live together. Their lives intersect. So, they just see the wealth and the qualities of the gods, and then they're jealous of them. Then they fight with them. Based on that, they fight with the gods. So also these gods are more powerful, actually, stronger. So they experience many sufferings of having their bodies chopped up, split, and the like. Although they possess intelligence, they are intelligent, but they have fully ripened obstructions and consequently cannot see the truth while in that body. What that means is, although that they are intelligent, it's not like they lack the intelligence to be able to understand emptiness. See the truth means to have an insight into emptiness. They do have the intelligence, but their minds are too obscured, and it by the to fully ripened obstructions anyway. So they just don't have the karma. Put it that way, they don't have the karma. They have too many obstacles in their minds and in their lives to be able to use that intelligence for understanding emptiness. Then the suffering of the gods. So this has got the desire realm gods, and then the gods of the upper realms, which means form and formless realm gods. So first of all, the desire realm gods. So they've got the suffering of dying and transmigrating, and then and also falling, from the god realms down to inferior life forms. Suffering of jealousy, and the suffering of being chopped up, split, killed, and banished. Chopped up and split, killed, and banished. So another thing I didn't say about the demigods is sometimes so of course I guess there are male and female demigods, and female ones can be very beautiful, and then the gods come down and steal them. I shouldn't laugh, should I? Must be awful. Must be terrible, right? A bit like, I don't think it's made up, but they in medieval England, that when a couple got married, then the wife had to, or the one who's just about to become the wife, I don't know if it was just after or what, but anyway, had to go and spend the first night with the lord of the manor. So they had no choice. Yeah. Except in, what was it? I can't remember now. It wasn't Braveheart. There was another one of them where he's not going to put up with that, so he goes and fights, but eventually doesn't get anywhere. Poor thing. So yeah, then chopped up, split, killed, and banished. Okay, so anyway, we're going through those one by one. The suffering of dying, transmigrating, and falling. So the first two are dealt with first, and then the second one. So at the time of dying and transmigrating, so going on to the next life, when a god has seen the 5 signs of death, the suffering that springs from this is far greater than the happiness that previously arose from enjoying the delights of God. So incredible suffering when they see these 5 signs. They've had such long lives, and then they have, I think it's like a week before they die, they get these signs. But that week is in in God days, and those God days can be like, many human years long. So here they are. So anyway, the 5 signs of death. So they start to look ugly. Then they dislike for their seat. I should look into that. Actually, I'm not quite sure what that's supposed to mean. They don't like their seat. So get another one. I don't know. Then wilting of their flower garden. So this apparently is it's difficult to relate to, really, isn't it? I mean, big deal. So apparently, flower gardens is a big thing for gods. So anyway, their flower gardens usually they're always fresh for the whole life. Actually, I suppose like nice smelling flower gardens, probably quite nice actually. Then they're closed up to become smelly, and then they start to sweat, which they never did before. And another thing is when if they wash, or if I guess they go swimming, then usually when they come out, the water just naturally comes off them. They don't need a towel to dry themselves off, but the water starts sticking to their body. Okay, so then the suffering of falling to a lower abode. In the same way, the letter to a friend, I think again this would be Nagarjuna, as they transmigrate from the world of the gods, in the event that nothing virtuous remains, they veer without control into the plights of animals, hungry ghosts, and beings of hell. So what it doesn't mention here is that they see that this is going to happen to them. And that's why it's so much suffering. They see where they're going to go, whichever of the 3 lower realms it is. I mean, of course, he makes the point here. It's not like automatically, but if their positive karma is finished, of course their karma for that life is coming to an end. They're just about to die, but there's no guarantee that they don't have some other good karma, but to be born as maybe as a human or even as a god again. But what he's saying is if they don't have any more good karma left, then this is what's going to happen to them. They're going to be born in the lower realms, and they know about that. In the suffering of jealousy, for the gods with extensive heaps of merit, the most exquisite sense of pleasures arise. When the offspring of the gods with little merit see that, they envy them and experience acute suffering and mental unhappiness. So it's like they've got these different levels, and so you can see that probably they feel like scorn for the ones below them, but then jealous of the ones above them because they've got everything is really so much so amazing, and they're so rich and such longer lives, and they look much more beautiful and so on. Anyway, so jealous, they get jealous of them. Where it says the offspring of the gods, the expression comes up sometimes. I don't know what it's supposed to mean. Offspring of like Lai-Pu. I don't know if it means that there are like young gods and old gods. I don't know if they have children. I'm not sure they have children. I know the Greek gods and the Norse gods, and I suppose the Roman gods. I think they all have children, don't they? But I'm not sure about these ones. But anyway, it calls them offspring of the gods, and it doesn't seem to mean anything other than the fact that they're simply their gods. But anyway, so they have jealousy, and we know about jealousy, right? So can you imagine? It's probably like the whole life, feeling jealous towards your neighbors. The suffering of being chopped up, split, killed, and banished. That was kind of like, anyway, chopped up, split, killed, and banished. When the gods fight with the demigods, then they experience the suffering of having their limbs and minor body parts chopped off, the suffering of their bodies being split, and the suffering of being killed. If their heads are chopped off, they die, but the remaining limbs and minor body parts that are chopped off or split grow back, and they survive. They only die if their heads are chopped off. Does this ring a bell, anybody? This is what do you call it? The Highlander, right? All those immortals. The only way they can kill each other is with them by cutting off the head. So they must have got it from the I know, what do you call it, the Indian Hindu sort of culture, possibly Buddhism. I don't know. So anyway, yeah. So the limbs grow back otherwise, but if it's the head, then they're finished. As for banishment, when there is conflict, the more powerful gods drive the weaker offspring of the gods out of their abodes. And again, what it doesn't mention here, I don't know really why, but when they have these signs of impending death occurring, so a lot of them are going to be visible to the other gods, right? So then these other gods, it's like they don't want to be near them. A little bit like human beings. It's like, you don't see really old people generally. We keep them in homes. People don't want to see them, old people. I remember a friend of mine, actually, I think I can't remember how old she was when she died, but I remember even in her 70s, she was talking about, oh yeah, at this age, you have to have a shower every day because people already find you pretty kind of like disgusting. This is what she said to me. I'm not sure about that, but there is something, in people, the older you get, I think start, they don't want to be around old age. I think people don't want to be around old age. That's probably what it is. Just the fear of seeing what's going to happen to you. I don't know what it is.
But people say that, and there's some truth in it. Actually, I think maybe there's another reason why you don't see old people, because they're old. So they don't. I mean, like my mum, she always used to go hiking and stuff, do a lot of walking. Now she can't. So she doesn't go out as much. She doesn't even want to go out as much. Probably goes out twice a week. Wants to do shopping, wants to visit friends and stuff. Yeah. But anyway, whether it's like that with human beings or not, I don't know. But they do say that the other gods, they what do you call it anyway? So they ostracize them. They don't want to go near them. So then the suffering of gods of the upper realms. How are we doing? Oh, that's good. So next week we can start with the mental afflictions. That's good. So so the upper realms, as I said before, means the form and formless realms. So when we talk about form and formless realms, then who inhabits those is the form and formless realm gods, and those are called the upper realms, and so those gods are called the gods of the upper realms. Okay, we have got into the habit of talking about the lower realms and the upper realms. Ngensong and Tedro, actually. Ngensong, Lama Zubrimshe used to like to sort of translate a little bit literally. Ngensong, the evil gone. So why he insisted on that is because the point of that name is that because they are there because of the destructive karma they created. They're not there because somebody put them there. They haven't always been there. They got to go there because of the bad karma they created, evil that they did. But most people don't do that. So like the suffering realms, the unfortunate realms, lower realms. But as soon as you say lower realms, then it's understandable you'd want to call the rest upper realms. But really, the word upper realm refers to the form and formless realms, the desire realm gods, the demigods, humans. Those are, and also the form and formless realms. Those are dendo. So the happy realms. Of course, there's suffering, but relative to the hell beings, pretas, and the animals, there's a lot of happiness, much less suffering. So they're called the happy realms. Dendo. Anyway, so form and formless realms. And to be born there, you don't just create a lot of good karma. You have to develop shamatha, and based on that shamatha karma abiding, then there's a whole process for developing your concentration. So you could, if you wanted to, be born in higher and higher levels of these two, the form and formless realms. So let's see what it says. Although gods in the two uppermost realms do not have the suffering of suffering, so of the three types of suffering, suffering, suffering change, and the condition of suffering, they don't have the suffering of suffering. So there's no pain. They do have mental afflictions and obstructions, and they lack control over their death. So even though they have no pain, sickness, and so on, they still got their mental afflictions. So they might spend their whole life in meditation, but still the mental afflictions are there because they didn't apply the antidote. They didn't realize emptiness. They didn't get rid of that. They got rid of them. And of obstructions, the obscurations to achieving liberation and enlightenment. They don't have any control over their death, their transmigration in their next state. In other words, they can't just decide not to die. Eventually, they're going to die when the power of the karma that got them there has come to an end. They're going to have to die. They're going to have to go on, and they're going to have to go to another life, and they don't have a choice about where they're going to be born. It's just their karma. So this is why they suffer through negative tendencies. Again, the negative tendencies, remember from Kishisoku, I mentioned before, is to do with the karma and the mental afflictions. So basically, they still have the karma and the mental afflictions and the imprints of all that. So there's everything is still dictated by those. They still don't have choice. So they still have that suffering. They're not beyond suffering. To be honest, I find the whole idea of being born in one of those realms quite depressing. But at least you can't be born there by accident. You'd have to get the karma binding first, and then maybe you'd have to start being careful. Otherwise, it doesn't just happen like that. So anyway, then just read this out from where is it from? The Discourse on the Collections. I'm not sure who wrote that, but anyway, let's see. One in the form or formless realms, having transcended the suffering of suffering, transcended in the sense of not having it, during that life not having it. A master of the bliss of concentration. In other words, anyway, they have this very powerful concentration, who stays immovable for eons. Because of the power of their concentration, they can remain in that state. I don't know, meditation really, but I suppose you could call it meditation. But anyway, they can stay in that concentration, experiencing bliss for eons. But such a person is still not certainly freed at all. So they haven't achieved any kind of definitive freedom from suffering. They will still fall from that state again. And I don't know what this is supposed to say. Let's read it anyway. If he or she emerges from that, right, and seems to abide beyond the whirlpool of pain of lower rebirths, he or she won't last there long, even with effort. So it's making the same point again. So it's almost as if they're beyond suffering. They have no suffering at all. It's as if they're beyond suffering, but they're not. It won't last forever. And then there are a couple of analogies. So just like a bird in flight. So the bird, I know, we have these birds of prey, especially ones that fly very, very high, right? So high, but eventually they're going to land. There's no choice. They have to land eventually. So just like that being in the upper realms, they're up high, up so high, in a way, metaphorically speaking, but eventually they have to come down and suffer again, down to suffering, like the suffering of the lower realms. Just like an arrow shot by a child. I don't know why a child, but anyway, whoever it is that shoots an arrow, no matter how high the arrow goes, it ends up landing. And then just like a butter lamp that blazes for long while actually perishing moment by moment. So you can get these candles that last for ages and ages, right? But the amount of time they have left to burn is getting less and less all the time. So just like that, this person is completely oppressed by the suffering called compositional thoroughly changing. So anyway, this the point is that all of them are free of the suffering of suffering, and even some of them, when they get to higher levels, I think maybe from the fourth level of the form realm, and certainly in the formless realms, they don't even experience the suffering of change. So they don't even experience pleasure, just a neutral feeling. They feel that the experience of pleasure is disrupting the peace, the peace that they're experiencing. So they sort of choose peace over pleasure, happiness, let's say. So they just, they can go for eons in this very peaceful state. But they still have they don't have, for that period, they don't have the suffering of suffering, they don't have the suffering of change, but they do still have the suffering of conditioning, which means that all during that time, they still have the potential to suffer. suffering of change. In other words, they are experiencing peace and pleasure and so on all that time. Can be for eons and eons and eons, but they still are in samsara. They still didn't escape. So it's just pointless. Completely pointless. So if we dedicate and then so anyway, what did we do? We finished off looking at the 8 types of suffering. Then the 6, was it with the 8 of yeah. So then the 6 sufferings with the that way of summarizing them into 3, and then the different sufferings of humans, demigods and gods, desire realm gods, and the form of formless realm gods. So anyway, wherever you are, as long as you're wherever you are, as long as, and whoever you are, as long as you still haven't got rid of the power of the karma and the mental afflictions through meditating on emptiness, and especially combine that with bodhicitta so you can achieve enlightenment, you're still not beyond suffering. You're still going to suffer again and again and again. It'll go on endlessly until you practice the path. So then next we're going to be going to the mental afflictions, how they arise, how they make us create karma, then how we die, how we go on to the next life, and how we take rebirth. Dying, transmigrating, and rebirth, slightly different. So that's going to be very good. That's good, yeah. Okay, so shall we dedicate? We've got time to do. Oh, well, it's now 5:30. So anyway, let's do some, a few dedication prayers. Please, Michael. John Job Sim Jorim Boche Ma Ge Panam Ge Gyuchi Ge Pa Nyamba Me Pai Kone Kondo Pa Sho. Then scroll down, please. Due to the past, present, and future merits collected by me and all the merits of the 3 times collected by numberless Buddhas and numberless sentient beings. May bodhicitta be generated in the hearts of all the sentient beings of the 6 realms, and especially in the hearts of everybody in this world, including all the students, benefactors, and volunteers in the FPMT organization, and especially Land of Medicine Buddha. May it be generated in the hearts of all those who rely upon me, all those for whom I have promised to pray, and all those whose names have been given to me. So include, please, in this all the people whose names have been put down on the prayer list, dedication lists at LMB and all the FPMT centers. May it be generated in my heart and in the hearts of all my family members, those who are living and those who have died. May the bodhicitta that has already been generated increase. Incomparably kind and supreme Tenzin Gyatso, the wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, may you have a long life and all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. I fully dedicate all these virtues to be able to train just like the hero Manjushri, who knows reality, and just like Samantabhadra as well. I fully dedicate all my roots of virtue with the dedication praised as the best by all the gone beyond victorious ones of the 3 times in order to have good conduct. Due to this virtue, may I quickly become a Guru Buddha and lead all transmigratory beings without exception to that state. Due to the past, present, future merits collected by me, the numberless Buddhas and the numberless sentient beings, which are completely empty of existing from their own side, may I, who am completely empty of existing from my own side, achieve the state of full enlightenment, which is completely empty of existing from its own side. I lead all sentient beings who are completely empty of existing from their own side to that state, which is completely empty of existing from its own side. By myself alone, who am completely empty of existing from my own side. As long as any sentient being has not been liberated from samsara, may I abide in samsara to help them, even though I achieve highest enlightenment. by merely seeing, hearing, thinking about, or remembering me, as well as by touching me or talking to me. May all suffering instantly be pacified, and may there be happiness forever. Peerless teacher and assembly of the Buddha, of the children of the victorious ones, Shravakas and Pachika Buddhas, victorious Losang, father and sons, along with the lineage masters, all the objects of refuge of infinite lands, please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now. Holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice, you wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable Venerable Guru, to you I make request. While striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and for mother living beings, you suddenly departed to peace. What a great loss. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of the three jewels and the great waves of bodhicitta of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of a reincarnation swiftly beam in glory of fortunate disciples. Okay, thanks very much, and hopefully see you all next week. Bye.